We moved to Chicago in the middle of November. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones before you even get the door shut. Kevin, my husband, had just been promoted, senior strategy director or whatever title makes you sound more important than you are. He was proud. Talked like he'd just won a war. I played along. Our new place was a duplex in Lincoln Park, all hardwood floors and exposed brick, some designer couch I wasn't allowed to put coffee on. The kind of place that looked like a catalog but never felt like home. We had a small balcony with a fake fireplace and a view of bare trees and perfect sidewalks. I hated how clean it all looked. Too clean meant too staged. Too quiet meant something wasn't being said. I hadn't worked since we moved. Back in Austin, I ran a small creative agency. Branding, social campaigns, weird projects with weird people. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. In Chicago, I applied for a few jobs, never followed up. Mostly, I scrolled, made half-finished lists, drank wine before 4, and watched the neighbors through the blinds like some suburban cliché in a city disguise. Kevin didn't ask much. He liked when things looked fine. He'd say, "You just need time to adjust," which really meant, "Don't ruin this for me." We weren't fighting. But we weren't doing anything else either. Sex was a box we checked twice a month. Usually after he closed a deal or after we had wine at dinner and neither of us could make excuses. It wasn't bad. It was just neutral. Like sleeping next to a polite stranger who sometimes remembered how you like your coffee. One Thursday night, I made pasta I didn't feel like eating, put on a playlist to drown out the silence, and sat through a dinner where we talked about his day and the crypto market. At some point, he looked up from his phone and said, "You remember Ryan, right?" I paused. That name felt like a loose wire in my chest. "Ryan from college?" I asked, casual, like I hadn't already thought about him 100 times over the years. Kevin nodded. "Yeah. He's back in the States. Got some tech branding gig downtown. Said he might swing by next week. You two met once, I think. Remember that trip to San Diego?" I nodded slowly, my fork frozen mid-air. Of course I remembered. Ryan had been the guy who always looked like he had a secret. The one who laughed like he knew something you didn't. He'd flirted with me in a way that was always 2 inches away from inappropriate. He'd backed off when I got engaged to Kevin, but not before he told me, half joking, that comfort was the most seductive kind of trap. I never forgot that line. Kevin kept talking, oblivious. Something about how Ryan had lived in Amsterdam, then Berlin, then somewhere in Portugal. He's been everywhere. Done everything. Still single, of course. Dude's allergic to commitment. I nodded again, but my mind was already somewhere else. Already remembering the way Ryan's eyes lingered too long on your face. How he could make even silence feel like it had teeth. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kevin passed out early. His body turned toward the wall like always. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, letting it spin my thoughts into knots. I wondered what Ryan looked like now. If he still walked like he owned every room. If he still remembered the conversation we had on that hotel balcony. Drunk, 2 a.m, me in someone else's sweatshirt, him saying, "You're gonna get tired of pretending this is enough." Saturday night started like any other. Kevin in a blazer he thought made him look younger, me in a black bodysuit under a leather jacket, wondering how much longer I could fake excitement. We were headed to some flashy club in River North. One of those rooftop spots with velvet ropes, bottle service, and people pretending they're not looking around the room to see who's watching them. It was a team thing. Kevin said that a lot lately. "It's a team thing, Ash. Just come for a bit." Which always meant I'd be sitting alone for half the night while he made rounds, laughing a little too hard at things I never found funny. The line outside was freezing. I hugged myself, teeth chattering. Inside, it was worse, loud, hot, and trying too hard. Bass thumped under my feet. Neon lights blinked in sync with my pulse. I made a beeline for the bar while Kevin greeted 2 guys in matching Patagonia vests. I was halfway through a gin and tonic when I saw him. Ryan. He was leaning against the far wall like he'd been there the whole time, like he wasn't surprised to see me at all. No dramatic entrance. No smug smile. Just a calm stare, one hand tucked in his coat pocket, the other holding a drink he wasn't drinking. He looked different. Older. Leaner. His hair was shorter, his jaw sharper. He still had that same posture, relaxed, but ready for something. Like he never fully sat down, even when he was sitting. Our eyes met. That was it. I felt it. He walked over slowly, weaving through the crowd like he had all the time in the world. I didn't move. My glass stayed in my hand, but I couldn't remember what it tasted like anymore. Didn't think you'd recognize me, he said, close enough for only me to hear. I almost didn't, I replied, voice steady even though my chest felt like it had cracked open. Ryan glanced around. You look different. Chicago does that, I said. He smiled. Just enough to let the corner of his mouth lift. Or maybe life does. I laughed quietly, more to myself than to him. What are you doing here? Came with a client. Saw you. Thought. Nah, couldn't be. His eyes flicked over me once, quickly, respectfully. Then you turned and I knew. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. Just looked at him and let the silence sit. Kevin appeared 5 minutes later. Threw his arm around me like a claim and grinned at Ryan. No way. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, Ryan replied coolly, shaking his hand. Kevin introduced us again like we were strangers. Ash, this is Ryan. Ryan, my better half. Ryan looked me dead in the eye. We've met. I nodded, feeling the weight of that understatement. The three of us talked a bit. Small talk, mostly. Kevin asked about Europe, tech, markets. Ryan answered politely, but I noticed how his gaze kept finding mine in the gaps. It wasn't dramatic. Just deliberate. Careful. Dangerous. At one point, I excused myself and headed to the restroom. The hallway was quieter, dimly lit, a moment of calm in the chaos. I stood by the mirror, fixing nothing, just breathing. And then I saw him behind me in the reflection. I shouldn't have come over, he said. I turned slowly. Why did you? He paused. Curiosity. Or maybe something dumber than that. Like what? His eyes softened. Hope. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My heart was a mess of questions I didn't want to ask. He stepped back. Anyway, good to see you. He walked off before I could say anything else. Back at the bar, Kevin was chatting with someone new. I stood beside him, smiling, nodding, pretending. But something had changed. Not in the room. In me. The rest of the night blurred. Lights. Music. Conversations I don't remember. But I do remember the way Ryan looked at me. Like he already knew I was lying to myself. The message came 2 days later. Just a simple line. Downtown this week. You ever come south of Fullerton? I stared at it longer than I should have. Typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Sometimes. He replied almost immediately. Room 507. Palmer House. Don't read into it. Or do. I didn't answer. But I didn't delete the message either. Kevin left for Milwaukee on Thursday morning. Something about a strategy workshop and dinner with potential investors. He'd been distracted lately. More texts, more after-hours calls. I could tell he was hiding something, but I didn't care enough to dig. That should have scared me more than it did. By noon, I was dressed and out the door. I didn't plan to go. I really didn't. But then I passed the train station, saw the sign for the red line, and my legs just kept moving. I told myself I was just walking. Clearing my head. Looking for a bookstore. Anything to avoid what I already knew I was doing. By 2:07 p.m., I was standing outside room 507, heart pounding like I'd run up 10 flights of stairs. I didn't knock. I just waited. Stupidly. The door opened before I could think twice. Ryan stood there barefoot, wearing a gray t-shirt and black jeans, like he'd just come back from nowhere important. He didn't look surprised. Just calm. Like I was late to something we'd both already agreed on without ever saying it out loud. Hi, I said. He nodded once. Thought maybe you changed your mind. I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. The room smelled like cedar soap and fresh coffee. Curtains were half drawn, letting the light hit the bed in this soft washed-out kind of way. It was quiet, except for the sound of traffic below. I stayed near the wall, arms crossed. Why'd you send that? He sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped loosely between his knees. Felt like I needed to find out if what I felt the other night was real or just old memory dressed up as something new. And? I asked. He looked at me. Not my clothes, not my body. Just me. Still figuring that out. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, feeling the weight of all the things I didn't want to admit. He said gently, "You can sit. I'm not gonna do anything you don't want." I sat across from him. Not close. But not far, either. For a minute, we just breathed in the same space. That alone felt risky. "I saw Kevin's hand on your waist at the club," he said suddenly. It looked like a lie. I didn't flinch. "You don't know anything about our marriage." "I don't need to," he said. "I know that if someone touched me like that, and I didn't feel anything, I'd probably be sitting in a hotel room with someone else right now too." That one hit somewhere I wasn't ready to go. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his thighs. "I'm not saying I'm the answer to anything. But I'm not pretending either." I looked down at my hands. "This is a mistake." He tilted his head. "Then why are you still here?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. There was this silence between us. Not awkward, not forced. It just sat there like truth with nowhere to go. He reached out, slowly, and touched my hand. Nothing dramatic. Just skin on skin. But my breath hitched anyway. I pulled back. Not out of fear. Out of knowing what would happen if I didn't. "I should go," I said. He didn't stop me. Just stood when I did, walked me to the door. As I reached for the handle, he said, "You don't owe me anything. But don't lie to yourself either. That's how people disappear." I looked back at him once more. Eyes steady. And I said, "I'm not gone yet." Then I left. But the lie was already unraveling. 3 days passed. I didn't text. He didn't either. Kevin came back from Milwaukee late Sunday, suitcase in one hand, takeout in the other like some domestic peace offering. I smiled, took the food, and listened to him recap meetings over pad thai while my mind looped one thought. If Ryan had kissed me, I wouldn't have stopped him. I told myself that meant nothing. Just heat. Curiosity. A ghost I needed to confront. But when Kevin fell asleep that night with his arm across my hip, and I felt absolutely nothing, I knew I'd already crossed some invisible line. Not physically. Emotionally. And it felt worse. The next night, I went out with Samira and Lana, old friends from Austin, in town for a design conference. We started at some loud fusion bar in Wicker Park, where everyone wore either black or neon, and nobody was really listening to each other. We moved to a rooftop lounge after that. By the time we hit the third spot, a speakeasy hidden behind a pizza joint, I was buzzed enough to stop watching the clock and start watching my phone. I didn't text him. But I wanted him to text me. And at 11:42 p.m., he did. "You out?" I stared at the message while Lana danced with a stranger and Samira was deep in conversation with a bartender about mezcal. My fingers hovered. Yeah. Wicker. You. Logan Square. Bonfire on a rooftop. No music. Real stars. Come through. No address. No pressure. I slipped my phone in my jacket, turned to Samira and said, "I'm calling it early. Headache." She kissed my cheek, already distracted. I grabbed an Uber and typed the address Ryan sent a minute later without even thinking. It was exactly what he said. A small fire pit on a flat rooftop, 6 or 7 people scattered in folding chairs, passing around a bottle of whiskey and talking about podcasts and weird dreams. There was music, but only faintly. Someone had a playlist on their phone playing soul instrumentals at low volume. Ryan was across the fire, sitting low, hoodie pulled over his head, jeans cuffed above his sneakers. He looked up the second I stepped onto the roof. Didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just held my gaze until I walked over and sat beside him. He passed me the bottle. "You came." "Apparently." "Didn't think you would." "Neither did I." Silence again, but the kind that curled around us instead of pushing us apart. Someone told a story about getting lost in Iceland. Someone else talked about quitting their job via TikTok. I wasn't listening. I was watching how close his knee was to mine. The bottle came back around. I took a sip. Passed it to him. Our fingers brushed. That was all it took. He leaned in, voice low. "You wanna go somewhere quieter?" I nodded. We left without saying goodbye. Inside the building, it was warm and dim. He led me up another short flight of stairs into what looked like a converted attic space. Low ceiling, string lights, mattress on the floor, a few books, speakers, nothing else. It smelled like cedar and cologne and burned candles. I sat on the edge of the mattress. He stood in front of me, hands in his pockets. "You sure?" he asked. I didn't answer. Just reached up and touched the hem of his hoodie. He let me pull it off. Still no kiss. I stood. We were eye to eye now. I put my hands on his face, just to feel it. He looked at me like I was something he didn't quite believe was real. Then he kissed me. It was slow. Intentional. Like he wanted to memorize the taste. And I let him. For a moment, everything fell away. The guilt, the consequences, the promises I'd made to someone else. All I felt was the weight of his hand on the small of my back, the heat between us, and the truth I'd buried for years. I missed being wanted. I missed being seen. We didn't go further than kissing. Not that night. But it didn't matter. The boundary was gone. The door was open. And I didn't want to close it. Kevin's birthday landed on a Saturday. He insisted on throwing a party, said he didn't want a big thing, which naturally turned into 40 people in a West Loop loft he rented on Pier Space. Catered Korean barbecue, a rented bartender, curated playlist, and a cake that cost more than my old car insurance. I wore a red dress. Tight at the waist, cut low enough to start conversations. Kevin whistled when he saw me in it. "That dress is illegal," he joked, kissing my shoulder. I smiled, but my mind was already elsewhere. Ryan was coming. Of course he was. Kevin had invited him. "It'll be great," he said, sipping from his overpriced cocktail the night before. "You two seem to hit it off at the club. Be good for you to have someone artsy to talk to again." Artsy. Right. When Ryan arrived, he didn't make an entrance. Just slipped in through the side door, dressed in all black, holding a bottle of mezcal like he had nothing to prove. He greeted Kevin first, shoulder grab, that same too familiar laugh. Then he turned to me. His eyes swept over the dress slowly, deliberately. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "You wear red like it's your real name," he said under his breath. "Don't start," I whispered back, lips barely moving. Too late. He disappeared into the crowd. The party buzzed. Everyone was smiling too hard, drinking too fast, talking like networking was a personality trait. I played my role, chatted with Kevin's coworkers, laughed at stories I'd already heard, pretended I wasn't scanning the room every 5 minutes for a flash of black denim and worn leather boots. At one point, Kevin raised a toast, thanked everyone, made a joke about turning 38 and still not understanding taxes. People clapped. I clapped. Ryan sent a text. Bathroom. Left hallway. 2 minutes. I stared at it. Then I moved. The hallway was narrow and dark, lined with cheap LED lights. The bass from the speaker setup thumped through the floor. I knocked once, stepped inside, locked the door behind me. He was already there. We didn't say anything. His hands were on my waist before I could take a breath. My back hit the wall. My heart slammed into my ribs. He kissed me like he'd been starving for it. And I let him. His lips moved from my jaw to my neck and back up, fast but careful, like he still respected the moment, even while destroying it. "You're playing with fire," I whispered, trying to catch air. He pulled back, forehead pressed to mine. "I think you want to get burned." We didn't sleep together. It didn't go that far. But it went far enough. Far enough that when I returned to the party, my lipstick was gone, my pulse still racing. Far enough that when Kevin pulled me into a hug and kissed my cheek in front of everyone, I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. And maybe I had. The party ended after midnight. Kevin was drunk happy, talking about how good it felt to have everyone we care about in one place. He didn't notice the silence in my eyes, or how I paused when he asked me to help him open gifts. I sat beside him on the couch, nodding, smiling, letting the room fade around me. When we got home, he fell asleep instantly. I sat in the kitchen, still wearing the red dress, phone in hand, staring at the message Ryan sent 20 minutes after the party ended. That should have happened years ago. I didn't reply. I just locked the screen, leaned back in the chair, and listened to the fridge hum like it was saying something I didn't want to hear. I woke up the next morning still in my dress, neck sore from sleeping on the kitchen table. Kevin was nowhere in sight. Probably out for a run or grabbing coffee from that place he likes where the barista calls everyone boss. I peeled myself out of the chair and headed to the bathroom, trying not to look in the mirror. My phone buzzed. A text from Samira. "Everything okay with you and Kevin?" He texted me something weird last night. Weird? I blinked at the message. My stomach flipped. I replied. "What did he say?" "Just asked if I thought you'd been acting distant. Said he felt like something was off." I stared at the words. My hands felt cold. Kevin had never said anything like that out loud. He liked pretending everything was fine. That was his thing. That was our thing. I typed back. "I've just been in my head. He's overthinking." Like. Instinctual, fast, clean. She didn't answer. Probably didn't believe me. Kevin came home later with bagels and a smoothie. He acted normal. Maybe too normal. Said, "You were out cold last night. Must have been a wild party." I nodded. Bit into the bagel. Tasted nothing. He kissed my forehead and said, "I missed you yesterday." I nearly choked. Later that week, things started falling apart without warning. It began with Kevin's laptop. He was in the shower. I was grabbing a charger from his desk drawer. His laptop was open. Not locked. Not my fault. I don't even know what I was looking for. Maybe I just wanted to confirm what I already suspected. Maybe I wanted a reason to even the score. Inbox open. Subject lines plain as day. "Dinner again? I miss the way you look at me when no one's watching." From Amanda L. Timestamp. 2 weeks ago. While he was in Milwaukee. The same night I was in room 507. Not touching Ryan but still touching the edge of betrayal. I sat there for 5 full minutes. Heart calm in the worst way. Like when a bomb's already gone off and you're just watching the dust settle. He came out of the shower, towel around his waist, whistling. I shut the laptop gently. Walked to the kitchen. Said nothing. That night, we watched a show we didn't care about and held hands like strangers learning how to fake it again. I didn't go to Ryan's place. I didn't text him. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if I told him? What if I told him Kevin was no better than me? What if that made me feel less guilty? The thought haunted me for days. Not because it made the situation better, but because I knew deep down it didn't change a thing. My betrayal was mine. Kevin's didn't erase it. It just made the rot mutual. 3 days later, Ryan texted. "You okay?" I replied without thinking. "He cheated too. Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't know what I want." He sent back one line. "Then come over and say nothing." I went. The moment I stepped into his apartment, he didn't ask questions. He didn't touch me either. He just poured a glass of water, handed it to me, and sat down beside me on the couch. We didn't talk about Kevin. Or the bathroom. Or the birthday. We watched some random movie in silence, and I let my head rest on his shoulder like we were something we weren't. Something safe. Halfway through he said, "You don't owe me a version of you that makes sense." I didn't reply. I just closed my eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself be still. But somewhere deep down I knew. Stillness doesn't last. It happened on a Wednesday. Rain. Late afternoon. City washed gray and slow. Kevin got home early from work. That alone should have been the red flag. He never came home early unless something was wrong or he wanted to catch me off guard. This time, I couldn't tell which. I was making coffee. Just poured almond milk into the mug when he leaned against the counter and asked, casually, like he was reading off a menu, "Are you sleeping with Ryan?" The world stopped. No yelling. No accusation. Just a flat question tossed into the quiet like it was nothing. Like he already knew the answer. I didn't say anything. Just stared at the steam rising from the mug like it could form a sentence for me. Kevin waited. Gave it a full 10 seconds before he sighed and said, "I figured. You act different when he's around. It's not hard to notice." Still I said nothing. So he continued, "It's weird. I should be angry. But I'm not. I just keep thinking, what part of this did we both let die first?" That cracked something in me. Because he wasn't wrong. But he wasn't innocent either. "I saw your emails," I said, softly. His face didn't flinch. Amanda. I nodded. Yeah, he said. That started a few months ago. Nothing serious. Neither was this, I lied. And we both knew it. We stood in silence. Him on one side of the kitchen, me on the other, separated by granite and broken promises. The kind of space that can't be crossed with a sorry. He rubbed the back of his neck. So what now? I didn't have an answer. All I could say was, I don't know who we are anymore. And Kevin, he laughed. Just once. Dry and bitter. I think we've been pretending not to notice that for a while. He walked into the bedroom. Shut the door. Not slammed. Just shut. Quiet. Clean. That night I didn't text Ryan. But he texted me. Did it happen? I stared at those 3 words for a long time before I replied. Yeah. You okay? I don't think so. There was a pause. Then, do you want to feel okay for a little while? I didn't type anything. Didn't need to. 15 minutes later, I was in an Uber. When I got to his place, he didn't kiss me. He didn't even speak at first. Just opened the door, took my coat, and sat beside me on the edge of the bed like we'd both agreed we didn't have the energy for performance. I turned to him. He looked at me steady, but tired too. You always knew, didn't you? I asked. That you'd come here, he said. Yeah. Why didn't you push? Because I wanted you to choose it. Not chase it. I nodded. Looked down at my hands. We lay back without touching. Just shoulder to shoulder, staring at the ceiling like it might give us answers. After a while, I whispered, I don't want to be saved. He replied, good. I'm not offering that. Then his hand found mine. Not pulling. Not claiming. Just holding. Warm. Still. And I realized, the worst part of breaking something isn't the sound. It's how quiet the pieces are once they hit the floor. It was supposed to be over. After that night with Ryan, no sex, just heat and honesty. I told myself I'd reached the edge. That maybe, just maybe, everything had broken open enough to finally breathe. Kevin didn't speak to me for 3 days. We lived like polite co-workers passing in the hallway. No yelling. No breakdown. Just that quiet, cold kind of avoidance people only master after years of not asking each other hard questions. On the 4th day, he came home with sushi and a bottle of wine. I was on the couch in sweats, pretending to watch a documentary I'd restarted 3 times. He placed the bag on the coffee table, sat across from me, and said, Let's stop playing dead. I blinked. I'm not here to fix it, he said. But if we're going to let it fall apart, let's at least tell the truth while we do it. It felt reasonable. Human. Almost mature. So we talked. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Enough to hurt. The next day, I told Ryan I needed space. I told him I didn't know who I was trying to be when I was with him. If it was me, or some version of myself that just wanted to feel dangerous, seen, alive. He said, I never asked you to be anything. I said, that's what makes it harder. He didn't fight. Didn't beg. Just nodded. Before I left his apartment, he stopped me. Stepped closer. Voice low. You're not wrong, Ash. But don't pretend you're innocent in any of this. You made choices. So did I. I'm not pretending anything, I said. But I'm tired of being someone's unfinished business. That was the first time I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe disappointment. Maybe relief. I didn't ask which. That week, I went to dinner with Lana and Samira. A loud place in the West Loop with sticky menus and overpriced cocktails. The kind of restaurant where people shout over each other and call it ambience. Samira leaned across the table halfway through dessert and said, You've been off. Off how? Like, not present. Like you're trying to keep something from catching up to you. I didn't deny it. Just stabbed at my cake and said, What if I already let it catch me? Lana sipped her drink. Then you decide if it's gonna ruin you or remake you. Easy for her to say. She hadn't betrayed anyone. Samira watched me for a second, then said quietly, Is it Kevin? Or someone else? There it was. The line. I could step over it, or retreat. I looked her in the eye and said, Both. They didn't ask for details. Just sat with me, in the noise and the mess, like real friends do when there's nothing useful left to say. That Friday, I walked into Kevin's office to drop off a box of old camera gear he said he'd list on Craigslist. As I walked out, I passed a conference room. There she was. Amanda. Blonde. Confident. 30-something. Laughing at something on his phone like they'd never stopped. She didn't know me. I didn't flinch. Just kept walking. But Kevin knew I saw. He texted me an hour later. She was part of it. She's not anymore. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know who I was rooting for anymore. Him, me, or the version of us that had already died but hadn't had the decency to bury itself yet. That night, I stood in the shower until the water went cold, forehead against the tile, letting the past 6 months replay like a film I didn't audition for. I realized something simple and awful. You can destroy someone quietly. By withholding. By distracting. By slipping away one unspoken moment at a time. And that's exactly what I'd done. The email came on a Tuesday. Not from Kevin. Not from Ryan. From Jess. Subject line. You could. Jess, my old roommate, my once best friend, the one who moved to Seattle 2 years ago to chase non-profit dreams and yoga studios with exposed brick. We hadn't spoken in months. Not really. Just the occasional heart emoji under a photo, I miss you on birthdays. Hollow social media glue. But she'd always known how to read me, even from 2,000 miles away. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared at her words like they'd been written in a language I almost forgot how to speak. That afternoon, I took the train with no real plan. Just wanted motion. Something that felt like forward, even if it wasn't. I ended up in Hyde Park, sitting on a cold bench across from a food truck selling fried plantains and chicken skewers. I didn't eat. Just watched the wind bully plastic cups across the sidewalk. I called Jess. She answered on the first ring. Wow, she said. I almost forgot what your voice sounded like. I didn't have a comeback. After a pause, she added, So, who are you lying to right now, him, yourself, or everyone? I almost hung up. Instead, I whispered, all of the above. Jess didn't sugarcoat things. Never had. It's why we were close, and also why we eventually fell out. She never let me hide. Not from her. Not from myself. She said, You're acting like you have all the time in the world to stay lost. I said, I'm not lost. I'm just not ready to be found. She was quiet for a second. Then, you sound tired. I am. Then stop running from the fallout. Sit in it. Feel it. That's the only way you stop making the same mistake with a new name. She didn't mention Ryan or Kevin. She didn't have to. We both knew. That night, Kevin cooked. Spaghetti. His peace food, he used to call it. When we first moved in together, he'd make it after arguments, like flour and sauce could fix what words couldn't. We ate in silence. Halfway through, he said, I talked to my sister today. I looked up. Okay. She asked how we were doing. I told her I didn't know. I set my fork down. He continued. She said she always thought we looked happy. Isn't that funny? Looked. I didn't laugh. Perception's cheaper than truth. Is that what Ryan gave you? The truth. I blinked. Hard. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't even look angry. Just hollow. I swallowed. He didn't give me anything. I took it. He nodded slowly. That's worse. Later that night, I texted Ryan. We need to stop. He replied. You already did. Then he added. But I didn't. And just like that I knew. This wasn't going to fade quietly. 3 days passed. Then came the real blow. Kevin had dinner with some of our old friends. People we hadn't seen in a year. Mutual friends. Friends with loose mouths and passive-aggressive empathy. I didn't go. Didn't need to. Because at 11:17 p.m., Kevin came home and said 5 words. They know. About you too. I froze. Apparently Ryan had been less careful than I was. Maybe a text left open. Maybe a comment made at the wrong time. Maybe he wanted it to leak, to see what I'd do when the curtain dropped. Kevin didn't yell. He just looked at me like someone who no longer recognized the shape of the person in front of him. "You let it happen in our life," he said quietly. "Right under the ceiling we picked out together." Then he went to bed. No slamming doors. No suitcase at the door. Just silence. That's when I realized, the most brutal kind of ending is the one that doesn't announce itself. It just stops needing you. The house didn't fall apart like in the movies. No slamming doors, no screaming match at midnight. It unraveled like fabric slowly coming undone at the seam. You don't notice it at first. You just stop reaching for each other in the hallway. You stop refilling the Brita, stop asking how the meeting went, stop folding the towels the way the other person likes. Little nothings turn into a kind of quiet war. And we were fully enlisted now. Kevin and I were still living together, still sharing a space, but there was a draft between us. Not a cold one, not bitter, but the kind of chill that comes from the absence of warmth. From too much distance held too long. I didn't go back to Ryan. Not physically. Not in the literal sense. But my mind still traveled to him without permission. When I heard a song he used to hum under his breath. When I walked past the bus stop where we once stood in the rain, talking about nothing. When I found a receipt from that cafe he liked buried deep in my coat pocket, from a day that didn't feel real anymore. He was in my head in ways I didn't expect. Not like some fantasy, but like a splinter. Small, sharp, buried. On Tuesday, Jess showed up. No warning. Just a text from O'Hare. "I'm outside. If you don't let me in, I'll stand here and perform an exorcism on your front porch." She had 2 coffees in her hands and a look on her face that said she already knew everything before I opened my mouth. We sat on the couch with our legs tucked under us like we were 24 again, broken laughing about dating idiots. Only this time, I was the idiot. And I had no one to blame but myself. Jess didn't ease into it. She never did. "So," she said, blowing on her coffee, "what exactly are we doing here?" "I don't know," I said. "Do you love Kevin?" I shrugged. "I used to. I think I still love what we were. Not what we are." Jess tilted her head. "What about Ryan?" I didn't speak. She leaned in. "Ash, do you want to be with him?" I wanted what he represented. A door. An escape hatch. But I don't know if it was him I wanted, or just the version of me that existed when I was with him. Jess went quiet. That kind of quiet that wraps around a room and makes everything sharper. "You're grieving," she finally said. "But the body isn't buried yet, so you're not allowed to mourn." I looked down at my lap, twisting the hem of my sweater. "So what do I do?" "Stop pretending like staying stuck is noble," she said. "Pick a direction. Any direction. But stop standing in the doorway pretending you live in the house." That night, I checked Ryan's Instagram. It was still private, but his profile picture had changed. A photo of a woman's hand, long fingers, polished nails, resting on a car steering wheel. Her bracelet was delicate, gold, the kind of thing I would have worn when I still cared about looking effortless. I zoomed in. Stared too long. That hand wasn't mine. I closed the app. Set my phone on the nightstand. Face down like it had betrayed me. But I didn't cry. I just sat there, feeling the slow ache of being replaced before the goodbye was even final. 2 days later, Kevin cooked dinner. Salmon with lemon and rosemary, roasted potatoes, green beans trimmed perfectly. He plated it like a peace offering. We ate in silence for a while. No music. No news playing in the background. Just the scrape of forks against ceramic. Then out of nowhere he said, "I've been offered a job in Denver." I looked up. He didn't look at me. Just stared at his plate. "They want me to relocate. 6 weeks from now." A pause. "They asked if I'd be bringing my wife." He finally looked up. I didn't know what to say. Neither did I. That night I stood in the shower until the water turned cold, forehead pressed to the tile. The steam had faded, but I stayed in place, hoping the quiet would give me some kind of answer. It didn't. But the silence told me this much. We were too far gone to fix. Too quiet to save. And I was running out of places to hide.